And welcome to the Alouettes Flightdeck podcast dedicated to Montreal Alouettes football. I am Tim Capper. You can find me on X at Repact. That's REPPACT.
And I'm Cliffy D. You can also find me on X over at Cliffy D.
So how you doing, buddy? Week one's in the books.
Week one's in the books. Football is officially back for everybody, especially as of this Thursday. Football back for officially everybody because Ottawa will finally get a chance to join the party. But Montreal got things kicked off, and boy, howdy, did they ever get things kicked off in a absolutely fantastic way.
Yeah. It was just considering what the Alouettes went through last year, coming into this year, obviously it's been completely different, as everybody has seen through our eyes over at camp and stuff like that. And by the way, if you've missed any of it, head over to our webpage over at our archives and YouTube also, and catch up, because there's been a lot you've missed if you haven't if you haven't been with us from day one. So, but we'll forgive you. We'll forgive you this time around, right?
Hey, there's still time. It's not going anywhere. So yeah, definitely go check it out. And you're right. Talk about just the way the season got underway in Winnipeg, which again, I love how a lot of people have taken that as a sign of disrespect, even though we do know the logistics as to why it happened the way that it did. Why not use that as fuel? Why not use that to sort of gain a psychological edge? Use something to fire yourself up with. And the simple fact that the Alouettes, despite being the Grey Cup champions, had to go to Winnipeg to play in the Grey Cup rematch. I mean, I will say this, though. Could you imagine if the game we saw last Thursday was the Grey Cup game that we saw in last November?
Yeah.
Like the absolute dog walking that the Alouettes did to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers last week. Yeah. Imagine if it was like that in the Grey Cup as well. Oh my.
Yeah, no kidding. And before we get into that in a little bit more, because there's a lot to talk about the game and some CFL news, some very, I don't want to call it historical CFL news, but it is very important CFL news for fans across the country. I just want to remind everybody that this podcast is presented by our good friends over at SportBuff, where if you use the promo code ALSFlightDeck10 at checkout, you'll be able to save 10% off your entire order. So head over to sportbuffshop.com, use the promo code, buy merch until your heart's content, and don't forget to support local. Also, want to remind you that we've already put this out on social, as you have heard this, as you're hearing this rather, that it is back. SportBuff Flight Crew seats, home opener tickets are now available for you to win. All you have to do is head over to our socials. It's very simple. They're going to be very simple this time around. Just answer the question. We will pick our winner, and you will be notified by next Tuesday. So that will be Tuesday, the 18th of June. So we will let you know then if you have won. So again, for those one pair of tickets to see the home opener, banner ceremony, et cetera, because man, it's gonna rock. It's gonna rock.
It is.
Head over to our socials.
Yeah, and if you don't have your tickets already, I mean, shame on you first and foremost, because I mean, if you're gonna sell out any game this year, you would think that the game where they're going to be unfurling the championship banner, saluting the Grey Cup champions, it's their first official home game of the 2024 season. I'm telling you, if you don't have your tickets already, shame on you. But if you don't, then we here at the Alouettes Flightdeck, we got you. So yeah, definitely make sure you enter, whether it's on X, Facebook, Instagram, any of our socials. The question's there. Just answer that question, and Tim and I will select the winner. And you could be there next Thursday night watching the Alouettes welcome the Ottawa Red Blacks.
That's right. Alouettes do beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers 27-12. The score is a little bit it's not really indicative on how much the Alouettes did dominate this game. But the one thing I wanted to start off with, in particular, for any of those who may have watched us again, our Flight Deck Live, which, by the way, we are going to have obviously this week after the game versus the Edmonton Elks. So stay tuned to our socials for when that's going to go live. The Alouettes are kind of a little bit of a mash unit, aren't they, right now, Cliff? Because There's going to be some changes, obviously, on the offensive side of the ball and on the defensive side of the ball, because the Alouettes really did not become unscathed when it came to some major positions and some names that fans, I'm sure, will know that are on the roster.
Yeah, as great as it was to go into Winnipeg and thoroughly dominate, unfortunately, it did come at a cost. We suffered a few injuries, and at least one, unfortunately, means that one of our stars, one of our Grey Cup champions, has unfortunately he's out for the rest of 2024, and it sucks. I mean, my heart goes out to Reggie Stubblefield, especially. We've gone over his story numerous times, so I won't do that again. But you know how hard this kid worked to get on the field, and he was so excited at training camp to be able to go and help defend the championship and be a big part of it. And even though he still had a bit of uncertainty, like, okay, are they going to keep me around? Yes, Reggie, they're going to keep you around. When they've got you doing media day photos, like the ones that he's been doing, that means they're keeping you around. That means you're a part of this team. And dare I say it, you're one of the stars of this team. So unfortunately, Reggie only has one game under his belt this year, and it sucks. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and it's tough. And I know a lot of people were kind of starting to go the karma route because he was involved in a play against Chris Strevler, making a shoestring tackle. And some people think that maybe he was tackling a little too hard, or maybe taking some liberties with Strevler's leg. And I think it was like one or two plays later, Stubby tears his ACL, and a lot of people are saying karma, which that's not how karma works, folks. Like let's be realistic. That's not good. That's not good. I mean, I guess I should have seen it. Like when they brought the card out and put his leg out, and there's no movement or anything like that. Like, oh crap! Like something to do with his knee for sure. That's just, it's not good. It's not good. And he even tweeted about it while the game was still going on, that he's like, season's over, guys. I'm really sorry. He ended up deleting it, but I'm just like, say it ain't so. Just wait for the doctor results. Wait for the MRI. Wait for, like, just think good thoughts. But unfortunately, the worst case scenario happened, and Reggie went on his Instagram over the weekend and pretty much said, yeah, I'm done for 2024, guys. I'm sorry. And it's unfortunate, but all we can do is just think good thoughts for him, hope that he heals up, and listen, come back in 2025 and you pick up right where you left off. That's all. That's what I hope for Reggie, and that's what anybody that's a part of Alouettes Nation should be hoping for Reggie as he tackles this. And he's going to come out on top, stronger and better than before.
Yeah. It was, if I remember correctly, it was an ACL. Is that right?
Yes.
And the Owls haven't really held back at all. They put out an official statement. We have the press release here in front of me. So it's a well-known fact that, it's nothing that they were trying to be coy about. Obviously, Reggie seems to be bringing us through his entire process of his recovery, because he's already put out some stuff. He's already had, I guess he's had surgery or whatever he's had to do. And he seems to be, starting the process. So, follow him over on his Instagram feed. So,
thankfully, ACL injuries are not the career killer they were like 20, 25 years ago. I mean, you can come back from them. I mean, we've seen players in the Canadian Football League come back from ACL injuries, and I won't say necessarily be better than before, but it's like they're back like they never left. Best example of that, S.J. Green. Remember, he tore his ACL in 2016 while playing for the Alouettes. Took him about a year to recover, but when he came back, I mean, he ended up doing extremely well for himself. Unfortunately, he was doing it in Toronto Argos colors, but that's a story for another time. But yeah. Yes, all this to say that, yes, you can come back from an ACL injury, and it's simply a matter of putting in the work in and doing what you got to do to get back on the field. And, all we can say is, Reggie, we're rooting for you, and definitely wish you all the best in your recovery.
Yeah. Obviously, another very well-known name, and we don't know the full status yet because the He hasn't been officially put on either of the 1 or the 6-game injured list. It is wide receiver Tyler Snead, who went down in the third quarter. Didn't go down, but he got hurt in the third quarter after the 47-yard reception for the Alouettes. It seems they got caught up, I think, within the tackle itself. It's funny, we're talking about, Stubblefield and his tackling. It's something within the tackle itself. When he went down, seemed to be okay, but then he hobbled off, and by the end of the game, he was in a walking boot.
Yeah.
Obviously, he didn't practice all week, so he is out, but we just don't know what the current status is. There have been some rumors that he's going to go on the 6th game. Once the depth charts do come out on Thursday, we will find out where he actually has been placed.
Yeah. Also, too unfortunate because he actually made a couple of really, really outstanding catches against Winnipeg, and the play that he ultimately got injured on just looked like a regular run of the mill play. Like made an outstanding catch, got kind of rolled up on it, looked like a little bit. So I thought, oh, okay, well maybe he's just going to shake it off. He'll be fine. And next thing you know, as you said, he's walking around in a walking boot. I'm like, oh, that's never a good thing. But really interesting that they haven't released his status yet, and it's hard to say why. Like, do they think that they're trying to play mind games with Edmonton, making them prepare for Tyler Snead? I mean, you're walking around, you're in a walking boot. It's pretty safe to say you're at the very least going to go on the 1-game injured list. Like, I'm fairly confident that Tyler Snead may go to Edmonton with the rest of the team, but if he does, he's there in civvies watching the game. He will not be participating in this game. I'd be absolutely floored if we see him suit up against the Elks this Friday.
Yeah, exactly. And didn't look like it when the injury reports for practice came out today and he didn't practice all week, so we know he is going to be at least out 1 game. Another one too, and is a gentleman. It's kind of similar to what we've been saying when it comes to Reggie White, on a guy who really can't buy a break, even though Reggie did come off the 6th game today. He was activated. Is Tyrell Richards. I mean, another guy who just cannot buy a break, whether it been, he's gone through the arm. This is his 3rd injury since he's been with the Alouettes.
Yeah, a significant injury that's going to land him on the 6-game list. And it is so tough. I mean, he doesn't play this game half-assed. And I think that it's a good thing. It's a blessing and a curse, I think, in a lot of ways, because like when he's out there on the field, he does outstanding stuff. But when he's hurt, he's hurt. It's not, he doesn't have an owie, like he's really hurt. I mean, he's in a bad way. And it's funny, like he'll be the first to try and like say, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. I can go through it. I can work through it. I'm like, no, Tyrell, you cannot. Like if you're injured, you're injured. There's a big difference between being injured and being hurt, and trying to sell injured as hurt. There's no style points here. You're not going to get the toughest guy award or anything like that. There is nothing like that. Like, you got to look after you. You got to take care of yourself. And this is just unfortunate. Another roadblock, another bump in the road for Tyrell, which is unfortunate because 1st overall pick, and as I said, when he's out there, he's a bona fide playmaker. But when he's not out there, it's so tough because this Alouettes linebacking core is absolutely fantastic, but they have taken 2 massive hits with Reggie Stubblefield and Tyrell Richards gone. And man, once again though, it's next man up. It's going to give a chance for other guys to step in and show what they can do. Like it's where you see the depth of this team get tested. And this is nothing new for Alouettes Nation either. I mean, I think back to 2015 when, I believe it was 2015 when both Jonathan Crompton and Dan Lefevre got knocked out for the season due to injury. I mean, that's your top 2 quarterbacks right there.
Same game.
The first game too. Like, wow. I mean, that's the crazy thing about this game, folks, is that you never know when your next injury is going to come. And you just have to, as a team, you just have to be ready for it. You just got to take a look at, go down the depth chart and like, okay, you're up, get in there and make it work. And ultimately, that's where you find your stars. That's where you find your next superstars, is the guys that have been waiting patiently for an opportunity. Some wait the entire season on the practice roster, waiting for their number to be called. Some are called right away, and that's going to be the case this week. Is a couple guys now are going to get a chance to step in and show that what they did in training camp wasn't a fluke, that these guys are ready to go. So as tough as injuries are, now you get a chance to see what you've got on this team. You get to see who's going to step up and become that next superstar, the next guy that you're going to want to buy his jersey, or you're going to get his autograph, or get a selfie with, or whatever. Like the next big Alouette. Who's that going to be? We're about to find out, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, for him, it is a calf injury. We do know that he went down. He was attended to twice during the game itself. You and I didn't think much of it until there were the reports that the reports came out that Ty was hurt. Yeah, it's if Alouette fans remember, what is with these week one injuries that the Owls keep having and that fans are going through, because we all remember what happened to Stanback, just 2 years ago. So, and that was week one. Again, but as you said, and we'll talk about it with the preview coming up for the Elks matchup. The guy that stepped in for Stubby did really well. Did really well, in my opinion. But there's now footage on him and film, and the other teams are most likely knowing that he was going to start. But also with Sneed going down, and looks like Furvius is Shedler Furvius is coming off the 6th game. He's going to start, which will make it very interesting too, because there's so many stats for when it came out to hearing today with him coming in. But again, it's week one. Denny Mac seems to know what he's going to do. I think Owls fans should obviously be optimistic, and optimistic that these guys will be back at some point, whether it be this year or, in Stubby's case, in 2025.
Yeah. And if the guys that come up don't cut the mustard, then you know that Danny Mac is not afraid to go out there and sign some talent or make a deal happen. Like, he will, if he has to work the phones and find someone who can come in and replace the players that we talked about, he'll do it. And it's not personal, it's business. Like, he's in the business now of winning Grey Cups. He's got one under his belt as Alouettes GM, and you better believe he's aiming for another one. So
yeah,
he'll do what he has to do to make this team, keep on rolling. I mean, they're 1-0 right now. The goal now is to go 1-0 every week. That's every football team will tell you that's the goal, and you got to make sure you got the best players possible in order to do that. So, if these replacements that come into the game on Friday against Edmonton, if they do great, excellent. Then we got nothing to worry about.
Yeah,
but if not, then Danny's going to get on the phone. He's going to start working the room. He's going to start. He's going to go out there and he's going to find the talent. If you don't have the talent there, he's going to find it. He did it last year when it came to Sean Lemon, Darnell Sankey, and so on. And simply put, this is the time. So I'm excited to see what these guys can do in relief of guys like Reggie Stubblefield, Tyler Sneed, Tyrell Richards, and so on. Once again, next man up. Be ready.
Exactly. Quite a few superlatives from the game itself. Obviously, as I said, the score was 27-12. But there's one stat, and we said the score really wasn't indicative on what how much the Alouettes really did dominate this game. And there's one thing that you can't have said. I think you said it in our post game Flightdeck Live. You also said it in our appearance last night on the Turf District podcast. What was that one thing you were talking about? Sure, it was 12 points. But what was the one thing that you made sure that you made clear to everybody who was watching?
That this Alouettes defense essentially held the vaunted Winnipeg Blue Bombers offense to 6 points. And truthfully, no touchdowns scored by Winnipeg until a minute change left. Like, it was
Mm-hmm.
essentially a garbage time tutty. Like, okay, that's great for your stats, but I mean, the thing about the fact that the Alouettes, who everybody had counted out, even during week 1 last week, a lot of people were saying, okay, Winnipeg's going to show that they are who they say they are. That the Grey Cup was a fluke, that the Alouettes were just a little bit better that day. Well, the only thing that Winnipeg showed last week was maybe Montreal just has them figured out, and they can't figure Montreal out because they were just decimated, quite frankly. I mean, it wasn't, I jokingly called it a dog walking, but by the Alouettes, but I mean, it was just a matter of the Alouettes just picked them apart, and there was just no answer. And a lot of people were blaming the fact that guys like Zach Caleros, Brady Oliveira, like some of the major stars, were not playing in either the preseason games, just only doing reps in training camp, and maybe that's just not enough. Like, as good as those guys are, and believe me, they are still elite players, you still got to put your reps in. You still got to get out there and get in some game day action, even if it's just 1 or 2 series. I mean, that's all that Cody Fajardo and Tyson Philpott did in game 1 of their preseason game, was just played a few series and then let the other guys go out and do it. But you still got to get out there. You got to touch the grass. You got to get in there and do the work. And I'm not saying that's the reason why the Winnipeg Blue Bombers lost in such tremendous fashion to the Alouettes, but my God, I mean, if you've got another reason out there, I'm all ears, because even I'm not surprised that the Alouettes won. I'm just surprised at how Winnipeg's offense really truly didn't show up. I mean, Montreal's defense is top tier. I mean, I even said capital R ridiculous, but I mean, to hold the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the defending Western champions, the back-to-back Western champions, to 6 freaking points.
Yeah.
What else can I say? I mean,
yeah, I know.
Wow.
Yeah. Cody Fajardo was 20 of 28, 254 yards, 1 interception, 2 touchdowns. The leading rusher was Walter Fletcher, 12 attempts for 36 yards, and leading the team this week. And obviously an upcoming and a budding superstar that we knew he was going to be, Tyson Philpott, 10 receptions on 11 targets, Cliff, for 141 yards and 2 touchdowns, including that phenomenal. And you know what it is? I think we've seen more trick plays with it in just less than 2 years out of Coach Moss's playbook than we have in quite a while. That flea flicker to a wide open Tyson Philpott.
Yeah, just as I said before, I love a good flea flicker when it's pulled off to perfection like it was last Thursday. Wow, just wow. And Tyson Philpott, I mean, guy was open all night like a 7-Eleven, and yeah, just absolute art. That's the best. I think the best way to describe that flea flicker was absolute art. And again, catching everybody napping, like even like whether it was Bomber fans or even Alouettes fans, I'm sure were just like, okay, oh my God, hand up, wait, what? And then the reaction, and then yeah, Tyson hauls it in, takes a couple of defenders with him to the house. It was absolutely fantastic. And I said, Tyson Philpott, I think he's going to go off this year. And again, just one game. Absolutely, it's just one game. But my goodness, that was a statement right there. And if we get more games like that out of Tyson Philpott this year, then yeah, ladies and gentlemen, there's your next great Canadian superstar. And he plays for the Montreal Alouettes. It doesn't get much better than that.
No, not at all. Obviously, some great people were supporting him, obviously, too. Julian Grant, 30 yards. Tyler Schnee, before he got hurt, had 62. But, beyond the, kicking was great. We were able to see, James Fletcher do his stuff. Everything seemed to go really well. And something we really didn't center on much in Flightdeck Live, but the defense, Cliff, that was a whole other story to this game. I mean, obviously you see what the score was, but it is what this defense was able to do to stop Winnipeg from scoring.
Yeah, and making Zach Caleros look average or mid is no small feat. But this Alouettes defense made him look like a rookie quarterback. Quite frankly, I mean that wasn't the Zach Caleros we've known for the past, I'll say, 5 years as a member of the Blue Bombers. Like he was just, it was definitely not his day. And whether you want to blame it on the fact that he didn't play any preseason games or had limited reps in training camp and things like that, okay, you can make that argument, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, like, you expected Zach Caleros to realize, okay, first game back, this is it. It counts now. Like, he's gonna turn it on like a light switch. But no, Montreal's defense was having none of that. They made his life miserable during those 3 hours that the game took. Getting sacked by Sean Lemon, Derek Wigan just ragdolling him to the ground. My goodness. I mean, they made his night very, very uncomfortable. Marc-Antoine Dequoy stealing a pass out of midair, a pass into the end zone right out of midair. Deontay Ruffin too, just making life miserable.
That was the play, really. I think that really made this defense shine this week. Obviously, but because this was before the Dequoy interception. But Deontay Ruffin's knockdown from Dalton Schoen in the end zone, where it seemed, come on, you got to admit, Cliff, it looked like a sure touchdown.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's just like what Cabin Into was able to do in the Grey Cup. Almost the same type of play in a way, but it just Deontay it was a hell of a knockdown, and it basically led to the Bombers only getting a safety.
Mm-hmm. The funny thing about that too was the Bombers game day crew was so sure that was a touchdown. Apparently, they shot off their touchdown cannon. Like, nope. Like, but that's, like you said, that 9 times out of 10 that would have been a Dalton Schoen touchdown. But I guess this was number 10 because Deontay Ruffin was having none of that. And yeah, just an absolutely fantastic pass breakup. Once again, this defense, absolutely ridiculous. There's just simply no other way to describe it. And from start to finish, like from the defensive line all the way to the secondary, the linebackers in between, I mean, this defense just put on a clinic last week against arguably one of the top tier teams in this league. Well, to hold that team to 6 points all the way through just about all 4 quarters of this game, like with it was like a minute something left, is when they finally managed to get into the end zone. I mean, to basically pitch a shutout. I guess the best way to do it. They basically pitched a shutout against Winnipeg's offense. And my God, if that doesn't get you excited, folks, I don't know what will. Yes, we want to see touchdowns. We want to see as many points put on the board as possible. And that's all well and good. But I mean, to know that this defense will suffocate their opponents and just make their lives miserable. I mean, that's something you want to see, along with the touchdowns, of course. But I mean, you want to see this defense just shut people down. And that's exactly what happened. And I mean, normally people talk about how Princess Auto Stadium in Winnipeg is one of the loudest, if not the loudest barn in the Canadian Football League. There were a lot of times where, like, I'm sure you could hear a mouse fart. That's how quiet it was. Like, it was just like the fans had no answer. They're like, what the hell's going on? Like, this is what's going on? Like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, Caleros they held him to 209 yards passing, no touchdowns. They got that one interception, as I said, by Dequoy. And I think another one of the bigger stats too is, even though Chris Streveler was making his return to Winnipeg, he was kept pretty much in check except for on one play. That's where that infamous play that we were talking about before, where people think Reggie Stubblefield did one thing and Streveler thought another, and held him to 32, but also held outstanding Canadian Brady Oliveira to only 38 yards rushing, Cliff. So it's that, again, the defense really held their own. That's why we were saying it's tough losing these 2 guys on defense, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens this week versus Edmonton. So it'll be, again, the Owls are going into a place where they came back from 21 down last time and basically blew the doors off of Edmonton. But we'll get into the preview here in a couple of minutes. But still, the defense needed to do what they needed to do. Any other things that you took away from this before we move on?
I couldn't believe, like, not only did Zach Caleros look human, so did Sergio Castillo. My goodness, like, that guy is normally Mr. Automatic, like money in the bank all day long. He was whiffing badly on a lot of his field goal attempts and such. And it was kind of funny that he was blaming the fact that the CFL is now microchipping their footballs in order to help provide better stats. And it wasn't supposed. Well, there was a little bit of a debate whether or not this should be involved for the kicking game as well, because if the ball sails to the upright, right, and that's it for a field goal or anything like that, then what do you need a microchip in the ball for that? And Castillo was more or less implying that was one of the reasons why his kicking game was off, was because of these microchips in the ball, which kind of interesting. Like, at first, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, because he's actually a very fantastic kicker. I just thought he had a bad day at the office. It happens, you live with it and move on. But then when this whole microchip thing came out, I'm like, I find it hard to believe. But let's see what happens with the other kickers and how they respond, like how their games went. And truthfully, I didn't see anyone struggle nearly as bad as what Castillo did. So I'm now kind of of the opinion of, well, it's a poor carpenter that blames his tools. And simply put, I mean, regardless of the ball that he was using, I mean, Sergio just did not have a very good game last Thursday. And, that's not a bad thing. It happens. Everybody has the yips. Everybody gets like that. I mean, it happens. It's not the end of the world, but
yeah.
Now as you look back on it, like, to blame these microchip balls on your lackluster performance.
Well, because people say too is that Dave Cote had a perfect day. But then again, the narrative was, oh well, they were shorter kicks. I mean,
regardless, I mean,
it's an extra point is still from 33 yards away.
Yeah,
what I mean? So it's
Rene Paredes was kicking field goals with no problem in Calgary.
Sean
White was kicking field goals with no problem for BC. Boris Bede, he had a miss, but you didn't hear him blame it on a microchip.
No, but to be fair, if by the way, we're good. We're done with this week, because that we can move on to that particular subject, since there was something that was released by the CFL. You good with going to that subject?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we said everything we needed to on the game, but cool. Yeah, that's
okay. So what happened was that the CFL actually, because of this quote unquote, and I'm doing air quotes here for people who are listening to the audio version, controversy. Because this is a thing that actually was brought up in the USFL, I think 2 years ago, where they themselves were also using chip balls. And supposedly, I think the chip itself is located where the CFL logo currently is on the ball, if I've heard it correctly. After the Alouettes game, the CFL put out a statement, or on the next day they put out a CFL statement. And first and foremost, Cliff, I would find it very weird, and I agree with you. Why do you put a chip in the K balls? It doesn't make any sense to put a chip in the K balls. I agree with you, because I always thought that if it was a kick, if you're kicking, you brought in a different ball. For offense, you use the regular balls. But the league put out a statement basically saying is that we're now going to give, because there was some talk on whether it was mandated or not. CFLPA, well, we never, they never tell us that they were going to be using it, or they only told us at the last moment. The league tried to quash this by saying, you know what, choose whichever type of balls that you want to use for kicking. It's up to you. And I think, and as you mentioned before, I think as of that Friday game, they were able to choose whichever they wanted as far as game ball goes, kicking balls. I'm not getting
Yeah,
The
yeah,
K-balls, chips in the K-balls. So it only would happen for one game that they
right.
were there, and I think that's why the others. But you know, you heard this, that, and the other. You had who were some of the kickers that they were
Well,
being very vocal on social media?
a lot of them had gone on social media to sort of state their case. Lewis Ward, Brett Lothar, those were the ones I remember right off the top. And then I know that they spoke to David Cote as well, and he too is, obviously not in favor of using chipped balls if unless absolutely necessary. But and
Yeah.
I get it; it's a comfort thing for the kickers. I mean, let's face it, like kicker, it's such a tough, thankless position that ideally you should want to give them every opportunity to succeed. And I'm still of the opinion that one little microchip is not going to truly affect how you kick a football. I'm like, as we got to see, and yes, obviously, I'm pretty sure that every other kicker from the rest of the weekend were using their own balls as opposed to the microchipped ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it just unfortunate for Sergio Castillo, but I mean, the more I think about it, it really just came down to he just did not have the best day, and that's fine. As I said, everybody, you would, if I think if you're a Blue Bombers fan, you would rather he has a lousy game in June as opposed to November.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's how I would look at it. It's like, okay, had a bad day at the office. It happens. Flush it. Move on. I mean,
So
to
you
go
had
to
a
go.
bad day.
Oh, I friggin' hate that song. But
Oh, so even better. But again, you know, I know there's more. Again, I know there's more of an issue in the USFL. I remember the league saying that they were going to be using the balls with these microchips. Again, why are you using them for K balls? It doesn't make any sense.
well, one argument I did see and kind of makes a little bit of sense is if it's a return, if it's being returned, if it's a missed field goal that's being returned out, tracking the stat for the returner. I could buy that to a slight degree, but at the same time, I mean, it's not so frequent, or at least ideally, it's not so frequent that.
It didn't do. If there's a chip ball and for that James Letcher quote unquote safety, it didn't help him. So, yeah, to me that was not a safety. Anyways,
yeah. So I'm hoping now. So with the CFL teams being able to choose the balls that they're going to use at their own discretion, that this essentially becomes a nothing burger, and one of those live and learn moments. Okay, we tried it this way, it didn't work. We're going to go back to this, and on to the next one.
Yeah, exactly. Press release is available over on the CFL website if anybody wants to read it, and yeah, I agree with you, Cliff. I mean, but then again, does this go? Is this potentially on the CFL not making things known? Well, I'll leave it at that. ... So, the league announced something. They made this broadcast announcement, and it is something, Cliff. It's funny that you and I have actually talked about for years. It's something that other CFL fans have also been clamoring for a couple of years, because we've been known to say that, you have your current set of fans who are able to watch the game on TSN RDS. But what about the new fans? What about those who do not are not cable cutters, or or those who have cut the cable and don't have cable, or don't want to pay for it, stuff like that? Mm-hmm. Well, the CFL announced for the first time in 38 years, that alone, 38 years, that the CFL will be returning to CTV. And for those of our friends in the United States or elsewhere who don't know what CTV is our national broadcaster here in Canada. They happen to be owned by the same company that owns TSN and RDS, which is Bell Media. So again, 38 years. So they've come together with a 7-week a 7-week block starting in right after Labor Day on Saturday. So a particular Saturday block of games each week that will begin at 3 p.m. Eastern time, which also includes the Eastern final. The Eastern semifinal, the Eastern final, and the Grey Cup. Cliff is going to be on free TV for the first time in who knows how long.
It's been a while, that's for sure. I mean, yeah, massive. I mean, it starts with the Banjo Bowl, actually. Winnipeg versus Saskatchewan, the rematch of the Labor Day Classic. So that's the first game that will be broadcast over the air nationwide, which is, to me, a great way to get if you're going to start an initiative like this. I couldn't think of a better game to get that started with, because Labor Day Classic is always fantastic, Winnipeg and Saskatchewan, but the Banjo Bowl afterwards, I mean, depending on how the Labor Day Classic goes, I mean, the Banjo Bowl could almost be considered must-see TV. And what a great way to kick off this 7-week journey, if you will, as the season comes to its basically the season gets underway, because a lot of people say the CFL season doesn't truly start until after Labor Day. So what better way to start the season, quote unquote, than with the Banjo Bowl, and carry it all the way through, literally all the way through to the Grey Cup game in November. I mean, that's going to be huge. I think a lot of fans that, as you said, don't subscribe to TSN or RDS for whatever reason, and they're not streaming the games on their phones or their tablets or computers. Now they get a chance to tune into their local CTV station, and they can watch Canadian Football League football. I mean, that's massive,
and can actually, these new, hopefully to bring in these new fans who just happen to turn the channel and come across it out of the blue. That's easily the best way to be able to gain new fans, whether it be in your current market or any of the other markets across the country.
Definitely. I mean, the fact that you can stumble upon, like, Saturday afternoon. I mean, you're still in the throes of NCAA college football, and I mean, that trying to wrestle people from that audience is easier said than done. But the idea that tuning into the game, like, you could just stumble onto this game on CTV and see this incredible CFL action, and you're like, oh, okay, okay, and then you're hooked, and you see it all the way through to the Grey Cup. That's huge. There's no question in my mind that's huge, and this is something that fans have been clamoring for a long, long, long time. In fact, I often joke that the State of the League address done by the commissioner every year, it's the same 4 questions asked over and over again. And one of those questions is, when is the Grey Cup going to be on CTV? You've got the Super Bowl on CTV. You've got NFL football all over CTV. Why can't the Canadian Football League get any love from their lead broadcaster, so to speak? I mean, and it's a valid point. It's absolutely a valid point. But starting this year, folks, tune into your local CTV station on Saturdays, and you will be watching CFL action. And yes, the Montreal Alouettes will be playing at least 2 games that on Saturday afternoon. So, which also means we've got to adjust our, especially, I think it's the Montreal Winnipeg rematch of the Week 1 game that was originally a 4 p.m. kickoff at Percival Wilson Stadium, and now it's going to be a 3 p.m. kickoff. And yes, if you're at the game, you have a chance to be broadcast nationally, coast to coast. How cool is that?
Exactly. And another game that you and I we're probably looking at going to also is the Montreal matchup in Ottawa on September 21st.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
So, there's it makes you wonder how they were setting up these Saturday games, a method to the madness type of thing, Cliff. Who would have thought for the first time in a long, long time that NFL football, because look when the Grey Cup is, it's in the heart basically of the NFL season. It's going to usurp any NFL broadcasts for that particular day.
Yep. And let's face it, the NFL is the money league. It's where everybody wants to go. Any of these players on these Canadian Football League teams will tell you if they get an opportunity in the NFL, they're taking it, and you can't fault them for it because that's where you're going to make the money. But to be able to be showcased on Canadian television, like prime time Canadian television, no less, especially when you're talking about the Grey Cup, that's massive in and of itself. And I cannot wait to see the numbers because, especially if it's like two really exciting teams battling for the championship. My God, I mean, dare I say it? Like, I mean, Grey Cup is a party in and of itself, being there as part of it, but then to have people joining in coast to coast on their TV, watching on their TVs. I mean, that's just be exciting. I mean, I'm really excited to see what those final numbers will be because if we get a good game too, I mean, people may hear about it. Like, maybe they weren't going to watch initially, but then if it ends up becoming a really good game, everyone's like, you got to tune in, you got to tune in, you got to tune in. And sure enough, everybody's got CTV, so you're going to tune in, and you could be, quite frankly, treated to an absolute barn burner of a game potentially.
Yeah, and you're talking about numbers too. This is another thing that I wanted to bring up. But by the way, the entire schedule is listed over on the CFL website. Make sure you do check it out because again, it's something that's 38 years in the making.
And yes, your reigning, defending, undisputed Grey Cup champion Montreal Alouettes will be featured on Saturday, not once but twice.
Exactly. So speaking of numbers, the early numbers came out for week 1 of the CFL, Cliff, when it came to broadcasting. And you know what? They were higher than 2023. And the opening game of the season, Owls versus Winnipeg, did quite well, didn't it?
Absolutely. Again, we've had a whole offseason to revel in what an amazing Grey Cup game it was. And I think a lot of fans, too, got the chance to check it out and see it, whether they were watching on tsn.ca or watching on YouTube or however it was they were able to check out the Grey Cup back in 2023, watching it all throughout the offseason. And like, I got to see this game. And that's what's great about this Grey Cup rematch. It seems every year now they do a Grey Cup rematch. And I think it's smart. It's absolutely smart. Smarter would be to have it at the home stadium of the champions. But again, not going to go there. In any event, this was if you were going to watch one game last week, what better game than the Grey Cup rematch? And it did not disappoint, unless you're a Winnipeg Blue Bombers fan. But yeah, I think a lot of people were tuning in because for that same sentiment that we got during Grey Cup about how people want to see the Alouettes win, or maybe they just want to see the Bombers lose. And anyone who's hoping for that definitely got what they asked for. And tuning in great numbers, I mean, that's fantastic. And what better way to kind of throw it in the face of all the CFL detractors? Because how many times we've been hearing about this? It's a dying league and nobody cares and yada yada yada. Like, you keep saying that,
and usually the games that get the higher ratings are have to do with Saskatchewan. That wasn't the case. I mean, the numbers that were put out, Cliff. I mean, from year over year, it was week 1 was up 22%. And the first game alone between Winnipeg and Montreal drew a total of just under 700,000. That's between TSN and the numbers from RDS.
And let's not forget, that's a Thursday night game. I mean,
yes,
people still had to go to school and go to work the next day. So, I mean, and with it being a central time start, I mean, the game ended a little bit late, but people still tuned in droves. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, and we got treated to a great game overall. Again, maybe not so much for your Bomber fan, but that was a pretty fantastic game to watch. And I think if someone was tuning in for the first time, wanting to see what the CFL was all about, I have to believe they came away with, wow, this is fun. This is exciting. This is action-packed. I'll tune in next week. When's the next game? Oh, tomorrow. Okay, great. I'll watch that. Oh, there's a game on Saturday? Great. I'll watch that. You got Sunday too? Okay, I'm in. Like, and that's how you build the fans. That's how you build the viewership. That's how you keep people interested and get them used to the idea that from Thursday to Sunday you can watch CFL action. I mean,
and then you bring in the CTV schedule. Yeah, because some people may be saying, well, the numbers, but for the very first game were between, English television and French television. Still, it brought almost in 700,000, and they say, well, it'll pull viewers away. Not necessarily. You know, up here in Canada, the Stanley Cup Finals is on 2 channels. It's on CBC and it ended on Sportsnet. So, and they drew, I think, just shy of 2.3 million, I think, for game 1, if I remember correctly, on Saturday. So it being on 2 channels or being simulcast on 2 different channels, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to reduce the numbers. That's all that they're looking for, is an increase in numbers. And if they can keep this going for week 2, because we got some great matchups coming up this week, I can, sky's the limit, obviously.
Oh.
So
absolutely. So, like I said, a great way to get the ball rolling, and let's just hope that it keeps building from there. Just snowballs and just keeps people entertained, engaged, and wanting more.
Yeah, exactly. I want to remind everybody that we are on social media. I'm sure you've been following us long enough. You know where we are, but we're going to let you know again anyways. If you happen to miss any of the past shows, whether it be, year 3, interview in year 3, or just last week's episode, make sure you head over to our archive at www.alouettes.flightdeck.ca. You can also follow us over on Twix, and is that Alouettes FL Deck. Facebook over at Alouettes Flight Deck Pod, Instagram and YouTube over at Alouettes Flight Deck. And what's so good about YouTube, you ask? Well, you can also find our podcast version over on YouTube. You can also find the video version of the podcast also over on YouTube. And for year 2, you can also find our partner show in Flight Deck Live, which is broadcast every week after every Alouettes game, win, lose, or draw. See Cliff and myself talk about what happened in the game itself and catch you up on that current week. So again, while you're there, by the way, don't forget to hit subscribe, hit like. That's what we want to see. We want to see you guys engage with us. And hey, if you have to leave a comment, leave us a comment too. We love to see you guys leaving us what you guys thinking about the show. It's it really. We really like to be engaged with our fans when it comes to these shows. Also, if you're looking to rep the merchandise for the show itself, you can do so by heading over to www.flightdeckgear.ca, where you can get your, Cartoon 56, Cartoon Bird 56 t-shirt, still our best seller ever. Or you can go and get one that has happens to have the podcast logo on it. Head over there, buy the merch, rep the podcast wherever you go.
Yeah. And of course, make sure if there's a notification bell on whatever social account that you're following us on, make sure you click that as well, so that when we do go live for Flight Deck Live, or whenever we do anything on the webs, you're notified of it right away, and you can get engaging with us right away. So, and we always say too, if you like us, tell a friend, tell a coworker, tell everybody. If you don't like what we're doing, tell us so we can be better. Simply put.
Exactly. And hey, if you're watching us for the very first time, by the way, on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Get us up to we're coming up on that 200 number, 200 subscriptions. So we'd love to get closer to that number. So go ahead and make sure you hit subscribe. Week 2 versus the Elks, and we something that we have seen, Cliff, over the past couple of years for the Alouettes. They don't start at home. They're usually heading out west, and that's what they're doing again this year. Heading out to Edmonton this week to play the 0-1 Elks, an Elks team that for the second straight home game, that leading back to last year's season home finale versus the Owls, and the game this week versus the Riders, they've blown 2 big leads. But this is obviously a different season, but it's still a completely different team. This Alouettes team is coming in banged up. The Owls are currently favored by 4.5 points. And I think the over-under for points total is about 48, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see from the Alouettes going into Edmonton? Obviously, they're going up against a different quarterback in McLeod Bethel-Thompson. Geno Lewis is going to be playing again, but this is a healthy Geno Lewis. What's your thought with these Owls traveling out to Commonwealth to see to play the Elks?
Well, I think they got momentum on their side. I mean, everybody believes in them now. I think they definitely proved themselves against Winnipeg, and in very handy fashion that they were able to dominate that game. And initially, the first thought you're going to have is, well, look what they did against the Elks last year. Surely they can replicate that in 2024 going into Commonwealth Stadium. And Lord knows they've got the horses to be able to do that. But at the same time, you don't want to overlook this Elks team. I mean, yeah, I think they're pissed off that they blew, what was it, a 17-point lead to the Riders and end up
13.
13. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But especially too in front of all of their alumni, because there was a big celebration for the 75th anniversary of the Edmonton Football Club. A lot of their Grey Cup champions, the guys that have won Grey Cups for Edmonton, made the return, and it was a great big old family reunion. And they got to watch Edmonton snatch victory from the jaws, or snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And the Elks have to be embarrassed the effort that was put forth. They couldn't close against a Saskatchewan team that arguably is probably in the same boat as them as far as talent and what they're able to do and all that. Like this was, I felt, was a really evenly matched game, and Saskatchewan found a way to win. Edmonton found a way to lose. They're going to go into this game against Montreal, and no one's giving them a chance. All the CFL.ca experts are. It was a clean sweep. Everybody thinks the Alouettes are going to go in and win this game quite handily. Edmonton's got to be thinking to themselves, we're getting disrespected. We're being shown no love. We got to make a statement here. And if Montreal's just going to walk in thinking this is going to be a cakewalk because of everything that happened last week, they're sorely mistaken. I think MBT is one of those quarterbacks that is able to bounce back and blow the doors off the competition once again. And I think he'll put up some pretty good numbers. I mean, this is going to be a great test for the defense, especially now with Reggie Stubblefield out. But you still got so many great weapons in that defense. As I talked about, top to bottom, this defense is on another level. And they're definitely going to be testing MBT and making that defensive or the offensive line. They're going to have to work extra hard to keep their quarterback upright. So to me, I think this is going to be a battle that's going to be won in the trenches. Both the offensive and defensive lines are going to put in a full day's work for sure. And the team that manages to keep everything together, manages to keep their quarterback upright and mobile, that's the team that's going to win. And I tell you what, I don't see this as being so clear cut for the Alouettes. I mean, I think, especially coming in, feeling good about their win against Winnipeg, but my worry is that maybe they play down to their opponent. And again, even if they're down by a couple of scores, yes, history has shown that they've been able to bounce back and win, because they did that last year against the Elks. Edmonton's going to have to do everything they can to make sure that doesn't happen. They've already blown a considerable lead in 2024. They do not want to do that again.
No, this is also a team too, by the way, where these players are very hungry. This will be the return of Walter Fletcher to Edmonton, a place where he has never had 100-yard game. And I'm sure that's one of the few things that he's going to want to do is to finally get over that century mark, rushing over at Commonwealth. It's so many weird things, dude. If you think about it, these two quarterbacks coming into this game, Cliff, each went through a streak last week. MBT had 13 straight passes at one point last week. Cody had 11 straight. Ooh. So, I mean, these guys can easily go off on streaks that, can easily turn a game. Easily. People, I hate to say it, speaking of Edmonton and Montreal, everybody remembers what happened to Montreal in that Eastern semifinal game a couple of years back where, Trevor Harris. I think Trevor Harris just could not be stopped. So, this is a team, they're hurting. We're curious to see how these guys are going to be able to gel versus this Elks team. Historically, the Alouettes have not played very well in Edmonton. Just over the past couple of years, the Owls have currently won, I think it's 4 straight in Edmonton, but still, you can't. whether the predictors say that the Owls are going to have a clean sweep across the board, it's not the case. They need to make sure that they stay focused and centered, because as we've seen, crazier things can happen in the CFL.
What I'm looking forward to, though, is I think Cody Fajardo is going to take full advantage of having not one, not two, but three national receivers at his beck and call, and
Which is unheard of. Really, it's funny. We're in the Canadian Football League, and very rare do you usually have a clean sweep at wide receiver. And in this one, as you said, we're going to have three of them.
Which is incredible. And I still think back to when the Alouettes basically treated the national receiver position with like absolute disregard. Like there was just no national receiver to be had, and it was bare minimum. But now you've got such talent in Tyson Philpott and Keon Julian Grant and Shedler Furvius, a name you may not immediately recognize, but believe me, if this kid gets a chance to go off, he will. I'm telling you right now, be ready. And it's going to be interesting too, because he'll be rocking Gino Lewis's number 87. So that's going to be probably very interesting for Gino to see. Is like, who's wearing my number? And then, just wait. Like this guy's going to do your number justice. I can promise you that. So I'm really excited to see those three get involved, making Cody look like a superstar, as these guys tend to do. I'm definitely looking forward for Fletch to go off. I would love nothing more to see him finally break that century mark at Commonwealth Stadium as a member of the Montreal Alouettes, and maybe get the other running backs involved too, because I felt like last week the run game wasn't really given a whole lot of love. I'd like to see that change. I'd like to see Fletch, Antwi, and even Sean Thomas Erlington getting in there, mix things up, and these guys can catch the ball too. So like, there's a lot of different ways that Cody can take this offense and just ram it down Edmonton's throat and put points on the board. I think that's going to be key, is if they're able to stretch the field, put a lot of points on the board, and just, I think you got to set the tone right away, just like you did against Winnipeg. Just punch him in the mouth right away and don't stop for the next 3 hours.
Yeah, and obviously we're also curious to see how well Bryce Cosby's going to do in place of Reggie Stubblefield. That'll be I think that'll be part of the storyline, I think, this week easily on the Alouettes defense.
Yeah, he had a very solid training camp. Obviously, did well enough to be considered a member of this team, and now all he needed was an opportunity. And it sucks that it came at the expense of Reggie Stubblefield, but as I said, when they call your number, they tap you on the shoulder and say, "Get in there, kid. It's your time now." Guess what, Bryce Cosby? It is your time now. So good luck. We don't expect you to replace Reggie Stubblefield. That's not the case. You just got to be able to maintain. And thankfully, Cosby will be surrounded by some very talented members of the secondary. They're going to help him along and make sure that they get the best possible game out of this kid as quickly as possible.
Yeah, one thing that we've kind of brushed over, but at least needs mentioning, is that Reggie White Jr. he was as I mentioned earlier in the show, he was activated from the 6th game, but he is not going to be playing this week, according to today's practice injury report. Obviously, Shedler was on the 1 game last week. Dylan Wynn was on the 1 game last week. So both of those are going to be available this week, as is Brock Dowenlock. He was a healthy scratch last week. He will be available. But Reggie White, Tyler Snead, Tyler Richards, and Reggie Stubblefield are obviously listed as out. As we mentioned earlier in the show, curious to see Tyrell being officially put on the 6th game, if that's going to be the case, and where Tyler Snead is going to fall going forward, to see how bad the injury is to Tyler, because it's just listed currently right now, Cliff, as a foot injury, but we don't know if it's a ankle. We don't know if it is a foot itself. We don't know what it is. So, and obviously with the way Coach Moss is in being, so how helpful he is when letting us know what's wrong with our players.
Keeping those cards close to the vest. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less from Coach Moss. I mean, that's just how he does things. So.
Yeah, exactly. But again, it should be a very interesting game. Obviously, game is on Friday. TSN RDS starting at 9 o'clock Eastern time. I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, stay tuned for about 3 hours later, 3 hours, 25 minutes, 15 minutes later. You will be seeing something earlier in the second half for when Flightdeck Live will be going on the air, as Cliff and I will be joining each other to go over what happened in this matchup.
Or as we said, hit the notification bell. That way
Oh.
you get told right away when we go live. So, I mean, that takes all the guesswork out of it, right?
Exactly. Enjoy the game this week, everybody. It's going to be a good one. And obviously it's 1 week closer to the home opener next week, where the Alouettes do unveil the Grey Cup Championship banner. So we're going to have fun with that, obviously, with next week's show. But we will see you on Flightdeck Live. If not, we will see you down the road, maybe next week for next week's show. So for everybody here at the Alouettes Flight Deck, for Cliffy D, I'm Tim Capper. Run Final Approach.